Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Today's episode is brought to you by Franchise 5. Why Franchise 5? I'm glad you asked. Growing your franchise in a slow, deliberate, and thoughtful manner is a smart way to grow. Franchise 5 helps you do this by expanding 5 locations at a time with a Zen-like focus on the geographic locations that make sense for your growth. To learn more about this, go to franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. That's the number 5. So franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. Now to today's episode. Today, I'm excited. We have Jania Bailey, who is the president and CEO of FranNet. Under her leadership, she's led FranNet through unprecedented growth and has established FranNet as the most respected voice in the franchise consultant industry in North America. Since her tenure began, FranNet has more than doubled the number of FranNet offices across North America and has transitioned FranNet to a franchise business model. So this is a franchise business for franchise consultants, or a franchise business that provides franchise consulting. Ms. Bailey has been instrumental in educating organizations on the benefits of franchising. She sits on the executive board of directors for the International Franchise Association and is a certified franchise expert. She also serves as vice chair of the IFA membership committee and has also authored the book Thriving: The Journey to Success in the Business World, and co-authored the Amazon best-selling book More Than Just French Fries. In addition to that bio, I'm also excited to have you tune into this episode because Jania really has a good perspective from both a franchisee and a franchisor perspective. One of the things that wasn't mentioned in this bio is that she also worked for Fantastic Sam's for in a regional director position for a franchisee who had multiple locations. So she is coming to her position now with FranNet with both experience on the franchisor and franchisee side. So we talk about that. We talk about what that's been like to grow FranNet. We talk about what they look for in their franchisor companies, what kind of process they take people through when franchise systems apply to be part of the FranNet system. And then we also talk about franchisees and, things that franchisees need to be looking for and ways in which the FranNet franchise consultants help franchisees through their decisions in terms of purchasing the right franchise for themselves. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my interview with Jania Bailey. Hello, Jania. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm really excited to have you. You're obviously the president and CEO of FranNet, and it's a franchise consulting business, right?
Yes, it is. We converted it to the franchise model 11 years ago.
Tell me about that, and most importantly for the people listening, because I know when I talk to individuals who I work with, and they talk about whether they've spoken to somebody at FranNet or another consultant, they're always amazed when they find out it's a franchise business in and of itself.
Correct. Well, it's a 32-year-old company that was originally founded as a mutual benefit company. So the people that had the offices did not have an asset. We know the difference in a franchise and a business opportunity type situation. You have an asset, which is the territory in which you're located. And this was very attractive to our people in saying they wanted to build their business for a future resale opportunity. Again, just like we hear from our clients. So when the ownership changed, this was something we began to put in process. And we had tremendous acceptance to the changes, and we've been able to give a lot more support. The franchise structure just works.
No, that's great. And so you guys provide franchise consulting, or at least the franchisees provide franchise consulting for people who are interested or who are essentially franchise prospects and they're considering different franchise systems, right?
Correct. And, the easiest way to explain it, I tell people we're like a executive recruiter, only on the franchise side. So an executive recruiter on the job side is going to match their clients with jobs that fit their goals and their skill sets. And, hopefully there's the perfect marriage. Well, we do the same thing. We work with brands figuring out who their candidate really is, who are they looking for. And then as we work with clients, we gather their information and build a business model to match back up to the various franchises we have in our portfolio.
And how many brands are you guys working with right now?
It really varies. As I tell people, any given day, the number can change, but right now it's in the 150 range.
So those are franchised brands that, as people come to you, if you see that it's a good fit or it's possibly a good fit, then you'll make that introduction to that brand and help prospects walk through that process.
Correct. One thing that I might throw out, we just recently published something called the Client Bill of Rights, and we're handing that to the client at the very first meeting. So they are fully informed of what our role is and what our role is not. And as I tell people, somebody will say, well, why 150? Why not 500? Why not, whatever? What we've done through the years is we kind of know where our clients are going to fall, what the sweet spot is. We do not do hotels. We do not do sit-down restaurants. That's not who the client is that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So we try to have within our portfolio a wide range of concepts that will fit the goals, the skill sets, the backgrounds, and the desires of the clients we have. So it's kind of a science and an art, and our people do such a good job of getting to know the individual. And what I love hearing the most is people say, I would have never found that concept had it not been for the guidance of my FranNet person.
Well, and I think that's a real important part of that process. I mean, I know people come to me and they'll ask me about franchise consultants, and I very much believe in consultants. I mean, I think inherently sometimes people might say, well, they're representing the brands, and then they're also connecting the prospects to the brands. But you have to have a semblance of trust between the prospects. And what I tell people is, if you're with a good consultant, first of all, they're going to be honest and upfront with you about the relationship, which it sounds like you guys are with your Client Bill of Rights. I think that's fantastic. I was unaware of that. But additionally, I think that there's a whole lot of information that you can help them gather that they otherwise can't get. And to me, it's a very worthwhile relationship. And I often tell people that for sure. And what I'm excited about with this interview is that we can kind of touch upon things on the franchisor side of things with your role with FranNet, as well as on the franchisee side. But I want to start on the franchisor side and tell me a little bit about the process or the application to become a brand that's part of the FranNet system.
That's great. And I always love telling people it is a process. And without an exception, every conference I go to, somebody will say, oh, I hear FranNet is so hard to get into and you all are kind of scary. And well, we don't want to be scary, but we do want to be selective. And the process is exactly the process we have our clients go through, Josh. So that makes it all the more perfect. So we start with an application that the franchisor completes, and it's really giving us the overview of the company, the management, how long they've been in business, total investment, that sort of thing. We ask that they submit that application along with a copy of their federal disclosure document. We review that federal disclosure document. A lot of time spent on the financials of the company, as well as an item 19 if it's included. I'm a banker by training, spent 18 years in that industry, so financials are one of my hot buttons. So we spend a lot of time making sure that franchise is financially sound enough to handle the kind of growth that a relationship with FranNet could result in. So we're looking at all of these things. We also have an outside firm that reviews the FDD just in case I've missed anything, in case our people have missed anything. How does it stack up against others in their specific niche of our industry? So we look at all of this. We then go to a review committee. Now, again, it's not a yes or no committee, but it's more of a, would you show this if it was available in our portfolio? And this is another thing I don't think a lot of franchisors understand. I don't want to bring in brands that we can't provide good service to. So it makes no sense for me to bring a brand into our portfolio, have them spend the time and money getting to know my consultants, attending our meetings, and never get any traction. So we really try ahead of time to find out, is this something my group will embrace and actually refer clients to? We get green lights all the way through this. We're now ready to negotiate the contract and begin the process of onboarding them into franchise. I skipped a step, the most important step, validation, just like we have our clients do. We get on the phone and we make phone calls. And depending upon the size and the age of the franchise, the number of calls we make. But the goal really is to talk to some that are doing extremely well, some that are middle of the bell curve. And then I like to make sure we talk to some who aren't really happy and even some that have left the system, because we need to know exactly what our clients will hear when we send them to this step in the process. So understanding the validation, if everything continues to be acceptable, meets our marks, then we go to contract.
Wow, that's a pretty thorough process.
Well, I like to think so. You always wonder if there's something else we could do, and we keep adding things to it. But
no, that's good. Does a franchisor do they pay something to go through that process?
No, they do not. Now we do have a fee if they join our portfolio, but no, that is our process. And if we wound up turning somebody down, I would hate to have already charged them a fee, to find that out. Again, kind of go back to my banking days. You work really hard to get a client to loan committee only to have to turn them down. So we try to make it as painless as possible for the franchisors up to that point.
Now, you not only have a background in banking, which obviously works well for your role with FranNet, but you also have a background with another franchise system, don't you?
Yes, I was a regional director for 6.5 years with an independent owner, that had a 5-state region with Fantastic Sam's. Left working for him and actually went to work for Fantastic Sam's corporate, and was part of their operations team, and was down in Texas working with the region there when I was tapped on the shoulder for the FranNet opportunity.
Well, that's great. I love talking to people who have experience on both sides of the equation. So let's jump to the franchisee side. I always get asked, what are the hottest franchises? And that's probably the worst question I tell people they can possibly ask, because it's a little bit like asking what's the hottest stock. I can tell you some pretty good franchises. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to jump right into them, because the market may not be able to withstand another one. You may be buying in too late. There's all sorts of reasons why you don't just want to jump to the hottest ones. But talk to me a little bit about, when somebody is looking to buy a franchise, what is the process that a FranNet consultant takes them through to help ensure that they make an informed decision?
Oh, and this is my favorite part. We sit down with that client. The first thing we have them do is something called a personal franchise assessment. Think in terms of a Myers-Briggs or a DISC profile, only this is our proprietary system that's been developed for FranNet over the years. And I explain it allows us to get into their head and their heart and really understand what makes them tick and what they're interested in and where they're going to be happy. One of the big cautions we give our clients is do not fall in love with a concept, their product or service. Fall in love with what you're going to be doing there. Be sure you're going to have fun doing it. So we spend a lot of time going through this. Once we have the assessment tool back, then we would sit down and say, okay, want employees, don't want employees. Work from home, an office, or a retail setting. How comfortable are you knocking on doors and actually generating business? We go through how many days a week would you be comfortable with your business being open? Do you want to eventually be a semi-absentee? Are you looking at multiple units or one? So we're going through this whole process, and I think of it like this huge funnel we're pouring all this information into. And the further we go through the questions, the more narrow the funnel becomes. And by the time we finish, we've got a very clear picture of the type of business this individual is going to be well suited for. And again, not necessarily to say it's going to be a restoration business, but more of maybe it's a business with very little recession impact and well established. So you start getting these kind of things, and that's where we begin the matching process. As we laugh a lot of times, some of the brands we represent would not be things you wake up in the morning and say, that's what I want to own. But once you understand the workings of the franchise, and most importantly, the financial return of that franchise, it becomes exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, there's a lot of people who, and part of this is that there's a lot of bad information out there on franchising. There's a lot of information, online and so forth, where to the average person, it looks like you just come up with the right amount of money, purchase it, and you're set for life. This whole idea that all of these are just businesses in a box and you just flip a switch and everything works out. I mean, it's a business. You got to run it. You got to work it. Now, granted, if you're buying into a good franchise, you're doing it with good franchise partners that have a system and a process that can help you along the way. But you, as a franchisee, still have business decisions you have to make with regard to your locations. And one of the things that I found over the years too is that oftentimes when people come to you, they don't even really know what they want. They don't know. I've had people come to me and say, yeah, I really want to buy this restaurant franchise. And okay, cool. Tell me why. We start talking about it. I said, so do you enjoy working with people? Oh, I hate working with people. do you enjoy managing, younger people, oh, that's the worst thing. I want to get away from that completely. And it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me all the things you're going to have to do on a regular basis. Why are you looking at this franchise? And it's almost like a light bulb goes off. And I'm sure you experience that all the time. And it's amazing to me because you would think that would be the first thing people think of. But I think a lot of the marketing out there, I think a lot of the information that people are taking in is selling people on this idea that just buy this business and you're going to be on your way to a lot of riches.
Well, and I think, when you get into restaurants, especially, people will see a new restaurant open or they'll visit one in a city they're on vacation and they'll be like, oh, that would do so well back home. And again, they're falling in love with the product. They're falling in love with the food. They're not thinking the whole business model through. That's why, Michael Gerber's books are so, so great. We have people get into those so they really understand not to work. They're going to be working on the business, not in the business. But at the same time, you've got to understand what's going on down there if you're going to be successful.
No, that's exactly right. And sometimes a franchise opportunity means you're going to be working in the business. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to know and understand the distinction between the two.
Without a doubt.
Are you guys located, across the U.S. in all states, or are there areas where you're not located?
We've got 55 offices in the U.S. We do have some markets that are not covered. The Dakotas, we do not have anybody. Mississippi, currently, we do not have anybody. But I would say that the majority of all of the metropolitan markets are covered. So it's more of some of the outlying markets now that we don't have a presence there. And in those cases, our people that are closest to that area would service those clients. We do have offices in Canada and Germany, along with the 55 in the U.S.
And so if somebody wants to get a hold of a FranNet franchise consultant, what's the best way to do it?
The best way is to go to our website, just www.frannet.com. And there is a click for consultant listing, and it's listed by state. And it makes it very, very easy to find out who is servicing your area and connect you immediately.
Well, and before we go, and by the way, thank you for your time. I mean, obviously you have a tremendous background, and I think it's been a very, very informative interview. You have authored a couple of different books. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about that because they sound really great. One being Thriving, The Journey to Success in the Business World, and the second one, co-authoring an Amazon best-selling book called More Than Just French Fries. Talk about those for a couple minutes.
Well, the most recent one, More Than French Fries, was a lot of fun because it was actually, as you said, there's several authors in there, and we've got people like Ken Yancey, the CEO of SCORE. We have some multi-unit franchisees in there, as well as franchisors, talking about their history in starting the business. And then we have some FranNetters telling their stories of working with women or working with millennials. So it really is a collection of anecdotal stories and history about the franchise industry. So I absolutely love that one. And that's really easy. You can download it free from our website that I mentioned earlier. So that was very inexpensive, nice little airplane read. The old book is old. It was before even my Fantastic Sam's days. It was my the years I spent in between banking and getting into the franchise industry. I was doing consulting and public speaking. And the focus of that book, and it's so strange how life works out, because that book really talks about the decisions we make and not allowing ourselves to be stuck in a corporate rut and a treadmill, just running because you're supposed to, but not knowing where you're going, and being brave enough to step outside those boundaries and try new things, which is perfect alignment for what I do now.
It really is. Isn't that funny?
It is. It is absolutely bizarre when you look back on your life and you go, wow, I had no idea I was foretelling my own future and what I would be doing.
Well, I mean, and I'll tell a quick story, but that's how I got into doing franchise law. Is people ask me, how'd you get into it? Well, I was practicing law for a couple of years, had a couple small business clients, and knew I wanted to niche down. And I just happened, just by dumb luck, between college and law school, I worked for a couple franchise businesses. So when I thought about niching down, I thought about franchising. Well, of course, at the time, I had no idea that it was going to be relevant to anything that I did. But now, all these years later, it's just funny to me how that experience from the business side of things has been immeasurably beneficial to me for the legal side of things in franchising. As I can imagine, your experience before you got into franchising, just in being in the business world, has transferred very, very well.
It has. And, again, you look back and all the puzzle pieces make sense eventually. At the time, it doesn't look like they're going to connect to anything. But I think they do. And I think it prepares us for whatever's coming next.
Well, thank you for coming on. Sounds like you're doing a fantastic job growing the FranNet business. And I thank you for sharing your insight and experiences with the Franchise Euphoria audience today. So thank you so much, Jana.
Well, and thank you again for having me on the show.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.